So we've been looking at containers from our perspective, from the perspective of low-tech, as this very interesting box. And in this talk, I will present about 15 projects that we've done that really vary in scale, size, scope, and take advantage of some of the both the quality of the container itself as a box, as a sort of architectural artifact, as well as its added value connected to the mobility, the transportability, and so on and so forth. Looking at these, looking through these projects, I'll talk to you also a little bit more about the containers as an object, as well as our interest in them, what we find so interesting in them. So single move project that we did for Uniqlo, Japanese clothing company. We've done some work for them here in Japan. I mean, there in Japan, here in the East, there in Japan. But they called us in New York when they opened their flagship store 2 years ago. And they called us because they are a very popular company in Japan, but they were completely unknown in the US, and they really wanted to create a brand identity prior to opening the store. So they called us with the idea of creating some pop-up stores that could go around and just start talking about the brand. And so we did this couple of little containers that, of course, carry the Uniqlo branding, and were popped out at different locations over the course of 3 months, which for us was a very interesting little project because of also the temporal nature. The container was very simply modeled, just cuts, vertical cuts that allow to see the merchandise, that also responded to the kind of Uniqlo branding, which is very much about these stacks of clothes. And then, you know, the interior was treated, as you will see very often in our work, very simply with pretty much as a cargo box with the added features of this drop-off fitting room for people that wanted to try clothes. Single again, network. This project is a project that we did as a conceptual project, and then with the help of grants, we actually managed to build a prototype, and it is the project that I met Kyung with. It's called the MDU, Mobile Dwelling Unit, and it basically takes on the idea of what if, rather than just thinking about recycling the container as an object, we think about recycling the entire system of the container, and therefore we think that in a moment in which nomadic life is much more relevant, and as I was thinking about this presentation, I thought that this actually would be a great home for Kyung. You should really buy it. The container is actually a home. It's your own home. It's completely retrofitted. It contains your belongings. It's designed to maximize storage. So it's your personal unit that you take with, and you take it around the globe. And you just plug it in. So what you see here is this sort of like infrastructural system that we thought as the harbor. It's a vertical harbor. So it operates very much like a port where you arrive with your boat and you plug in and manage to get water, electricity, connect to the waste stack and all of that. The crane is embedded in the design, and it plugs in the container on this vertical harbor. The container itself is designed so that it contains all the living functions completely within the standard format of the container. Here you see an X-ray of the object, but when it arrives on destination, you actually push these functions, which are kitchen, living, bed, you will see as we go inside. You push them out to allow the center space of the container to be free, and the functions instead being along the two sides, the two opposite sides. we got a couple of grants and the support of the Museum of the University of Santa Barbara, and actually managed to build a prototype. And here is the prototype being deployed at the Walker Art Center, open. And interior, very, very simply designed. Again, also on the inside, the container is a wood box, and the idea is that it is a wood box precisely because it needs to be customized by whomever inhabits it. So only the kind of infrastructure is set in place. There's also technological infrastructure, and every cubby or space that could be used for storage is used for storage, so that the dweller can take also its belongings. Kitchen, dining, work, clothing, books, sleep, bathroom, and just the amount of space that is available in a container, which is always kind of surprising. Eventually was also shown at the Whitney Museum. Here you see it in the moat of the museum. Module, so back to the container, what's the intelligence of the box? Which for us is actually a very important thing, because we are interested not only in recycling the object itself, but also by doing that in recycling a lot of our intelligence, of human intelligence that went into designing such a great object. Box is super simple, it's a steel box, it's got this genius feature, it's called corner fitting. It's a cast iron fitting with holes that basically receives different kind of pieces that allow containers to be connected, locked together, stacked one on top of each other, connected sideways, and so on and so forth, and picked up by cranes. And then there is a hole underneath, which is for the forklift. And just looking at it. The other great thing is the space, especially on a long container. The interior space of the container is kind of amazing. It's this stretched long space. Corrugated metal and a great wood floor. Extremely resistant, obviously, being done for shipping. So some of these features you'll see will reappear in the project. Single again slide. This is a project of a different nature. Is an interior, first of all, for a non-for-profit art foundation in New York, Boehm Foundation. The mission of the Boehm Foundation was the one of showing, being in a very flexible space where they could show very different kind of artwork. So they came to us and they had this really interesting warehouse space with these lines of columns. And they said, we want to do something that is really flexible, where we can have one large exhibition, multiple exhibitions going on at the same time, really high flexibility of space. So we thought, okay, we'll bring in a bunch of containers. They contain all the functions that needed to be contained: offices, meeting rooms, conference room, equipment, and a library. And then as the containers are moved, containers basically moved on these floor tracks that you see in the image. On the top, on the ceiling, there are other tracks that deploy these wall panels, so that inside you could have the kind of conventional exhibition space, but on the outside you have these containers. And we also were interested in the idea of treating these containers very much like a whale, in the sense that you use every single piece of it. So as we started designing the office or the lounge or the conference room, we thought we were going to just cut and bend. So the operation became very much about cutting and bending, on cutting and re-welding to create also the furniture. This is the conference room. This is the typical office, and this is the detail of literally the cutting and bending of the corrugated metal, and then just a resin cast at the top to get to a straight surface.